Okay, today we're going to supercharge a classic mathematical card effect using principles taught on the Absolute Math Magic channel. Okay, so you may have seen an original version of this effect before. Technically, this particular card effect has been around for over 350 years. But back in 1968, Ross Eckler came up with a nice incarnation of this effect involving these four very special words: Atlas, Bible, Goose, and Thigh. Okay. Now, I want to explain to you that you will not need to have a graphic like this created to be able to do this. In practice, what a person would do is just get out a blank piece of paper and then off to the side, write out these four words, explaining to the spectator that these four words are proven to have a psychic quality when combined in the way that we will combine them here. But to help you see what's going on and why it works, I created this outline here for us to help keep us on track. Okay, so how this effect works is you begin with 10 pairs of random cards. Okay, so you truly can have the deck randomized and mixed as much as the spectator asks for. Okay, and then from there, 10 pairs are dealt out to the table, face down, of course. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we need just one more. Now, for the sake of being able to demonstrate this without a spectator here, our 10th pair is going to be the special one that the spectator will, quote, choose. And also to aid us in remembering the cards, I've chosen the King and Queen of Hearts. Okay, so that should simplify things for us. Now, this routine works well if you have two or more spectators, because you could have one spectator remember one of the cards in the pair, and the other spectator can remember the second card. Now, if you have just one spectator, you might want to encourage them to write down the identities of their cards if they feel like they can't remember both of them long enough to see the routine through. Okay, so all of these, the 10 pairs are put out, and then what happens is the performer turns his back, and then the spectator is free to choose any one of these. They look at those and then remember those cards. Now, the pair we're going to go with is the King and Queen of Hearts. Okay, once the spectator has done that, the performer turns back around and then just picks these up in random order, because if you think about it, the performer doesn't know anything about the spectator's chosen pair. Okay, they really don't. Okay, so these can be picked up by the performer, or even the spectator can decide how those are gathered. But it is important to keep them in pairs. Okay, now where we're going to supercharge this classic card effect is by the mixing we will now do using principles taught on my channel. Okay, so right now this is something called an AMP, adjacent mirrored pairs. Now all that means then is cards taken as pairs from the top have some special relationship with one another. The relationship here is the fact that they were in a pair at the very beginning, and one of those 10 pairs was randomly chosen and remembered by the spectator. Okay, so this is technically what I call an AMP on my channel, and the way that I represent it down here is I have a 1-1 vertical bar, 2-2 vertical bar, 3-3, 4-4, 5-5. That's to indicate that the cards are related in pairs. Now we are going to also use two other packet structures that are used extensively on the Absolute Math Magic channel. The other one is called a two-cycle structure. And the simplest representation for it here would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can think of that as an ace if you want. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's a repeating pattern. When we have that, we call that a cyclic packet. And in particular, it's a 2-cycle with cycle length 5. Each cycle has length 5. There's 5 elements in it. The third and final structure we're going to take advantage of today is called a mirrored structure. So here, the values would read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you can see that down the center, it's the mirror image of itself across the center. Okay, so we have an AMP structure, which is where we start. We have a 2-cycle structure that we'll get in just a moment, and then a mirrored structure. Now, the original card effect starts with this kind of organization, what we have right now. Okay? And then from there, a person would immediately go into this dealing to the table in a kind of a special way. But what we're going to do is we're going to give it some mixing that should convince the spectator that no one, even they, will not know where their cards are after this mixing. Okay, so on my channel, I show how an AMP structure can be converted to a 2-cycle by way of an LR shuffle, left, right. So if you just deal out the cards left, right, with random stacking decided by the spectator, this will now be a 2-cycle packet with cycle length 5. So maybe the spectator wants it stacked in that way. That's just fine. Okay. Now, once you have a cyclic construction, random cutting of the cards will not change that fact. This is still, quote, cyclic. It has that same characteristic as before. Now, far more convincing than just a cut is the Charlier shuffle, if you've seen this before. Top to bottom, bottom to top, top to bottom. And I have a separate video on my channel that will teach you how to perform the Charlier shuffle. And so I'll add a link in the description below to that video. Okay, so this is a very convincing little shuffle. Okay, so we're over here still, we haven't harmed it. Now, to arrive at a mirrored packet, there's many ways to do it, but one of the simplest is to just perform what's called a 50% coating. COAT stands for count, out, and transfer. Now, all that means is you just deal out the cards, half of them. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Drop the remaining cards as a second pile, and then have the spectator randomly stack these. Maybe they want left on right. Okay, that's just fine. So now we're over here. Now, since it's mirrored, the stay stack principle applies, which is one of the most powerful principles in all of card magic. And once again, I have a video talking about the stay stack principle that I'll link in the description below. In the simplest terms, for each divisor of the packet size, you can deal the cards out into that many piles with random stacking from left to right or right to left, and it will still be mirrored. It won't hurt that. Okay. Well, 2 divides 20. We have 20 cards here. 2 divides 20, so we can deal into 2 piles. Okay. Random stacking. What else divides into 20? Well, the next divisor is 4. So why don't we we'll do 4 and then call it good here. The spectator now decides how to stack these, left to right or right to left. We can even do something called leapfrog stacking if you want to look into that on my channel. Spectator might say, okay, stack them from left to right. And you can go ahead and just faithfully do that. Okay, so it's still mirrored. Now, to get it back to an AMP structure, one of the simplest ways of doing that is to perform the Klondike shuffle. So that will convert this structure back to where we need it to be to begin this classic mathematical card effect. So the Klondike shuffle is where you take the top and bottom cards off as one. Okay, so it's kind of a fun shuffle to perform and watch, actually. Okay, so there we go. That's the Klondike. So believe it or not, we're back to this kind of arrangement. Now, it is true that we have a total of 20 cards here. I guess I should make that clear, but I couldn't easily fit those. So I went ahead and I'm kind of representing in simplified terms the structure for each, okay? So these packet structures are referring to 10 cards total, even though we have 20. But I think you can see the patterns involved. So they just generalize to a packet of 20. Okay. Okay, so we're here. And so this is actually where the original effect would begin. This is where they would begin, actually. Okay. So as I mentioned, what you could do at this point with a blank piece of paper, explain to the spectator and say, boy, there's this really interesting set of 4 words that just have this synergistic quality, almost psychic ability that will enable me to achieve something that should really be quite impossible. Okay? And the words are Atlas, Bible, Goose, Thigh. Isn't that strange? And so you could write those down, and then you could have the spectator reorder them if you would like. These can be reordered. It won't hurt anything. Okay. Now, once you've come up with the ordering of these 4 words that you're going to stick with, and you have this off to the side, kind of as a cheat sheet, actually, as reference. Okay. So what you do here is, remember, the cards are back in pairs. So somewhere in here is like a king and queen of hearts. We don't know where with all that mixing, but it's in there somewhere. So what you do is for each repeating letter, you put one of the cards from each pair down. So like right here. So here we go. We're going to put the first card down as an A there, and then here's another A. How about a couple of B's? Okay. We can do a couple of O's. That would be great. How about a T up here for Atlas and T for Thigh? How about an S over here, S in Goose, a G for Goose, a G down here in Thigh, L in Bible, and also in Atlas, a couple of E's, that's kind of easy to remember there, I there, and then an I in Thigh, and then a couple of H's in Thigh, okay? So once again, the identity of these cards would not be known to you as the performer. You have no idea which pair of cards the spectator chose from the random set of 10 pairs on the table. Okay. Now, the spectator knows what they chose, right? Because right here, they can see their king and their queen of hearts. Okay, so they can see that. And so you're only needing to ask the spectator one question, and you'll be able to perfectly identify the exact pair of cards that the spectator freely chose at the beginning. All you do is you have the spectator identify in which row or rows do they see the 2 cards that they noted. Okay, and so what they're going to say is they're going to say, here, the first row, they see one of their cards. And then in the 4th row, they see one of their cards. Okay? Now, what will happen with this particular set of 4 words, Atlas, Bible, Goose, Thigh? These words have 10 letters in them all together as a group, with each letter occurring exactly twice. So what that does then is, knowing the row or rows in which the spectator's cards are found, you will be able to confidently and uniquely identify their cards. Okay, so think back. So what's down here? So we have Atlas, A-T-L-A-S. So that's a T. Down here, what's the word down here? With Thigh, T-H-I-G-H, right? So do you notice something here? This is the T in Atlas. This is the T in Thigh. It's the only occurrence of a pair of letters. And so once they identify the 1st and 4th row, you'll know immediately that it must be that their cards are in the position T here and in the position T here. Because among all of these other cards, that's the only pair that can be found with one of the cards in the 1st row and one of the cards in the 4th row. Okay, so that is the kind of classic card effect that Ross Eckler kind of breathed life into again in 1968. And what we have done here is we have built on it with new principles taught on my channel, which will just further drive home to the spectator that those cards, after all of that mixing that we did at the beginning, where random choices are being made by the spectator along the way, no one, even if they knew the original location of these cards, no one would know where they are after that mixing. And the only reason that all of this is guaranteed to work for us is because of the structures that we're aware of that can be either preserved. Chardelier shuffle preserves this structure type. The LR shuffle, or dealing into 4 piles or even 5, will preserve this structure. And then the AMP structure is what we started and ended with as we mixed, as we kind of went around this little diagram and then made these little pit stops here with these structure preserving shuffles. So that really should ramp up the level of surprise in the mind of the spectator when all of that mixing was done with the cards, and yet in the end, using the classic strategy of this card effect, you're able to identify the precise identities of the 2 cards that they saw at the beginning. Okay, and maybe just for practice here, I want to just point out this fact that there's only 10 letters here, and each letter occurs exactly twice. Now, if that weren't true, you would not be guaranteed to be successful here. But it is true. Okay, so why don't we just quickly show you that. So we have an A here and an A here. There are no other A's. So if after dealing out the cards, the spectator says, well, guess what? Both of my cards are in this row. You'll know with certainty. It's in position 1 and 4. That's where you'll find their 2 cards. What about the T? Well, the T is what we took advantage of, right? The King and Queen of Hearts. L. L occurs just twice. Here in Atlas, once in Bible. So if the spectator says, oh, I see my 2 cards, one of them is in row 1 and 2, then you'll immediately know it's in these positions occupied by the L's. We have S here for Atlas, S and Goose. That's the only occurrence of these 2 letters. So if they say the first and third rows have one of their cards in each of them, then you'll know that one of their cards must be in this location and the other one is over here. Okay? I don't know if we need to go through all of these, but I think you can see what's going on. These double ones are kind of fun because if they point to just this row, then you know it's got to be the B's in Bible. If they point to just this row and say, oh, both of my cards are in the third row, you immediately know it's the O's in Goose. And if they point to this row here and say, that's where both of my cards are, you'll know it's in the H's for thigh. Okay, so as you can check any selection of 1 row or 2 rows, you'll be able to identify exactly where their cards are from that pair that they randomly chose. The E's over here are kind of fun because if they say row 2 and row 3, you immediately know it's in the positions occupied by the E's. Okay, and then as you can check as well, if you reorder these words, it won't change the fact that each letter occurs exactly twice, okay? And also, I want to compare this to the 21 card effect, which is a classic one, because there you had 21 cards. Here we have 20, so it's pretty close actually. But there you had to deal out the cards multiple times and keep asking the spectator, okay, is your card in this column or this one? Here, the cards are just dealt out once. And then the spectator, all they have to do is say which row contains the individual cards in their pair, and you'll know with certainty where their cards are located. Okay, so this is of a higher quality and more surprising nature than something like the 21 card effect. So thank you for watching, and take a look at other videos on the Absolute Math Magic channel.